Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're the show that takes a whole stack of sources, digs through them, and pulls out the core insights so you can get right to the heart of the matter.
And today, wow, we're tackling a big one. A really timeless debate, actually.
Absolutely. It's this fundamental question that really hits home for anyone trying to lead or build something or just get things done with other people.
What's the best way? What's the most effective and maybe more importantly, the sustainable path?
Exactly. Is it that kind of raw, sometimes tough coercive power you read about in Machiavelli's The Prince, that sort of hard-nosed approach?
Or is it something softer, more about persuasion, building connections, the kind of influence that maybe Dale Carnegie championed, though we'll be drawing on a wider range of sources for that perspective today.
Right. And we've got a fascinating journey planned, digging into our source materials to really put these two philosophies side by side. I'm going to be making the case for the Machiavellian view, arguing that, look, in a competitive world, maybe a firm hand, a really clear-eyed view of power dynamics. Maybe it's not just realistic, maybe it's often necessary to get things done decisively. It's about understanding, maybe, the tougher parts of human nature and, well, using them.
And I'll be pushing back on that. I'll argue that, yeah, those tactics might give you a quick win, a short-term boost.
Sometimes that's what you need.
Sometimes, maybe. But I'll argue that genuine rapport, real influence that's built on understanding and trust, that's the only way to get sustainable long-term success. And it's a real challenge for you listening right now because every day leaders, individuals, we're all kind of navigating these two currents, aren't we?
Constantly.
These different ways of relating to people, trying to achieve things. And like we'll explore, the answer probably isn't just picking one side. It's way more complex.
It definitely is. So yeah, get ready for a pretty spirited discussion. We'll both be bringing arguments backed up by the details, the examples from all the sources we've dug into.
This isn't just abstract theory.
No, not at all. It's about what works, what lasts, what really defines success in the long run. Yeah, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
All right, let's kick things off by diving deep into that Machiavellian perspective, making the case for, well, hard power.
Okay.
Because, let's be honest, the world is competitive. It's often unpredictable. Sometimes it's downright cutthroat. And in that kind of environment, having a realistic, maybe even a slightly cynical view of power, it might not just be a choice. It might be fundamental for survival, for success.
So necessity dictates the approach.
Often, yes. And Machiavelli, in The Prince, he laid out these principles that, okay, maybe they make us a bit uncomfortable today.
Understatement, perhaps.
Fair enough. But they offer this stark, almost, brutal clarity on how you acquire power, how you keep it, how you expand your control and actually achieve what you set out to do.
Okay, lay it out. What's the cool principle here?
One of the most famous, maybe infamous ideas is that it's better to be feared than loved. But, and this is crucial, there's a really important caveat.
Right, the nuance matters.
It really does. If you can't get people to love you, you must avoid hatred. This isn't about being a tyrant just for the sake of it.
So it's not just cruelty.
No, it's strategic deterrence. Fear, Machiavelli says, is just more reliable. It comes from a dread of punishment which never forsakes you. Love, that's fickle. People break that bond whenever it suits their own interests.
Okay, fear is reliable. But how do you inspire fear without tipping over into being hated? That seems like a knife's edge.
He's surprisingly practical about it. He advises the prince to abstain from the property of his citizens and subjects and from their women.
Property and women. That's specific.
Very specific. It sounds almost minor, but he argues it shows a deep understanding of what really drives people. He says, and this is pretty cynical,
Go on.
men more quickly forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony.
Wow. That's bleak, but maybe true.
Empirically, you see it play out, don't you? People care profoundly, maybe most enduringly, about their stuff, their livelihood, their ability to provide. Mess with that. Mess with their economic security. That's a much bigger risk to your stability than even, say, acts of violence, if those acts are seen as justified against enemies.
So, targeted force is okay, but widespread economic disruption is fatal.
He suggests that. He notes that excuses for taking property are never wanting. Once you start, it's easy to keep going. But reasons for taking a life, they're more difficult to find and sooner lapse. It means there are still boundaries, even in this hard-nosed view, and violating economic security is a line you cross at your peril.
Okay, so fear, but calculated fear, avoiding hatred by respecting property. What else?
Well, he talks about the military, the absolute necessity of having a reputation of cruelty to keep an army united or disposed to its duties.
That sounds harsh.
Think about it, though. Leading a bunch of diverse, probably unruly, maybe even mercenary soldiers, without that looming threat of decisive, harsh punishment for stepping out of line.
Chaos. Mutiny.
Exactly. Disunity, disobedience. It would unravel everything fast. The reality of command, especially in a crisis or war, sometimes demands that firm hand. Ruthless enforcement of discipline isn't about being mean. It's about projecting unyielding resolve to keep everyone focused on the goal.
So it's a tool for cohesion?
Precisely. And he gives a really vivid, if chilling, example. Caesar Borgia in Rome.
Borgia. Right.
Borgia strategically weakened his rivals, the Orsini and Colonna families. First, he poached their best people, their adherents who were gentlemen.
Oh.
Simple. Good pay, titles, positions, office and command. He turned their own allies against them by appealing to their self-interest. Classic Machiavelli, undermining from within.
Clever. Devious but clever.
Then, when the time was right, he used cunning wiles to pretend to reconcile with the Orsini, lured them into a false sense of security.
It's a trap.
Absolutely. And then bang. He used deception and overwhelming force to exterminate the leaders at a place called Senigallia. Brutal, yes.
Yeah.
But Machiavelli points out this act laid sufficiently good foundations to his power. It wasn't just winning a battle. It was eliminating future threats, consolidating control through decisive, ruthless action, guile, and force. He didn't just win. He changed the game entirely.
Okay, so that's the historical princely context. How does this translate to, say, the modern business world? Because surely we're not talking about exterminating rivals physically.
Not physically, no. But the underlying principles of hard power, of dominance, you see them everywhere. Let's look at Intel. The book 7 Powers details their market dominance brilliantly.
Right. 7 Powers defines power very specifically, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's not just being popular. It's having persistent differential returns, basically.
Yeah.
Consistently outperforming competitors over time. That comes from magnitude and duration.
And the goal is?
Materially boosting your cash flow. Higher prices, lower costs, less investment needed. And crucially, building a barrier that stops competitors from just copying you and eating away at your profits, what they call value-destroying arbitrage.
So how did Intel build that barrier, that hard power?
Several ways. One was being an early mover in lithography. They invested massively in the tech to etch circuits smaller and cheaper than anyone else.
A cost advantage.
A huge structural cost advantage. It wasn't just a little better. It made it incredibly hard for anyone else to compete on price. They basically squeezed competitors out. Aggressive investment, early innovation that created an almost unassailable position.
Okay. Technology and cost. What else?
Even more powerful, maybe, were the network economies they built. Think about early software. Lotus 123, MS-DOS.
The killer apps back then.
Right. And they were programmed specifically for the Intel processor. So if you were making a PC, you pretty much had to use an IBM clone architecture. And that meant you had to use Intel chips or Intel-compatible ones.
Lock-in.
Total lock-in. It wasn't just smart business. It was structural power. They created an ecosystem where competitors were almost coerced into playing by Intel's rules. They didn't just win the game. They basically built the stadium and sold all the tickets.
That's a powerful analogy, a very Machiavellian way of shaping the market.
Isn't it? Then you have, well, Enron, a more infamous example from the smartest guys in the room.
Oh boy, Enron.
Yeah. Their whole culture was this relentless, almost maniacal pursuit of hitting earnings targets. Executives got rewarded for hitting the number, even if you spent twice your budget for expenses.
That sounds dangerous.
The mindset was chilling.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much it costs you to make that $25 million. Results were everything. The means, often secondary. It bred this incredibly aggressive culture.
The ask why asshole thing.
Exactly. That wasn't just some throwaway line. It embodied the culture. Challenge everything, justify ruthlessly, push constantly, often confrontational. Weakness was jumped on.
A pressure cooker.
Absolutely. And look at Jeff Skilling's power play for the CEO job. His renegotiated contract basically said, make me CEO by the end of 2000 or I walk away with over $20 million.
An ultimatum.
Pretty much. It forced Lay's hand. Pure power politics, securing his position through a direct demand. And then there's the role of Anderson, their auditor.
Yeah.
Helping them turn dogs into ducks.
Right, using clever use of the rules, which really means manipulation, pushing boundaries, bending accounting reality to hit those targets. It was systematic deception enabled by those in power, transforming worthless assets on paper into something valuable. Hard power applied to the numbers themselves.
A house of cards built with coercive force, essentially.
You could say that. Then look at Goldman Sachs and The Big Short. Another example of ruthless, self-interested market power.
Selling bonds to clients while betting against them.
Precisely. They were selling bonds to its customers created by its own traders so they might bet against them using credit default swaps, leveraging their position, their customer trust for their own gain, regardless of the fallout for clients.
That's pretty stark.
It's a take-no-prisoners approach, prioritizing self-interest above all. And remember Mike Burry's attitude towards his own investors when his fund was tanking initially.
The North Korean dictator comment.
Yeah. An investor said, nobody else except. Kim Jong-il would write a letter like that when they are down 17%. Burry himself admitted he had no talent for caring what others thought of him.
Just pure conviction in his own analysis.
Total self-assuredness. Dismissing external judgment, investor panic. Almost that Machiavellian indifference to being loved, as long as he believed he was right and would ultimately be proven so.
It's a consistent theme, a focus on the goal, often ignoring the relational cost.
And this kind of control, this rigidity, you see it in strategic decisions too, sometimes with disastrous result. Blockbuster.
The classic example, dismissing Netflix.
Right. Why would we bother?
Yeah.
They saw online rentals as just serving a niche market with smaller profit margins. They clung to their existing power, their existing model.
And missed the future entirely.
Exactly. It was a failure to adapt, rooted in protecting their current dominance. Theodore Levitt warned about this in Marketing Myopia, the railroads thinking they were in the railroad business.
Not the transportation business.
Right.
Defining themselves too narrowly.
And failing to maintain strategic dominance as the world changed around them. Even Henry Ford, from Think and Grow Rich, he was incredibly obstinate about sticking with the Model T.
For a long time.
A very long time. Advisors told him to change, diversify. He refused. Now, eventually he had to change, but that initial inflexibility, that single-minded focus, it led him perfect mass production and yielded a huge fortune.
So sometimes that stubbornness, that hard line, pays off.
It can, for a while. It's holding firm to a vision, dictating terms to the market. Look at Michael Milken, post-prison, in that Forbes interview mentioned in Den of Thieves.
Still defiant.
Totally. A complete lack of repentance, using all the old carefully crafted buzzwords, creation of value, saving jobs like the crash never happened, an unwavering belief in his own narrative, despite everything.
Wow.
And finally, Ray Dalio's principles. He's very direct. If people repeatedly fail to operate the way the system needs them to.
Change the people or change the design?
Right. And Dalio says changing the design to fit weaknesses is generally a bad idea. So his preference, it is better to sort the people.
Get rid of those who don't fit.
Pretty much. It's a very direct, results first, hard approach. Fit the system or you're out. Efficiency over accommodation.
Okay, you've definitely laid out a compelling, if sometimes unsettling case for the effectiveness of hard power. It's undeniable, as you've shown with Intel, Borgia, even aspects of Ford or Dalio, that a strong hand, asserting power, making ruthless decisions, it can drive immediate results. It can build those structural advantages.
It gets things done.
It does. It's effective, often brutally so, in hitting short-term goals, securing dominance. But, and this is the huge but for me, what's the cost? What's the cost to trust, to long-term viability, to genuine human engagement and commitment?
Are those always the primary goals, though?
I'd argue for sustainable success, they have to be. The Machiavellian approach, while powerful, often seems to trample on that intricate, fragile web of human relationships. It creates dynamics based on fear or transaction, which, as history and, frankly, common sense show us, can be incredibly unstable in the long run.
So you're saying it's inherently self-defeating eventually?
I am. I contend that genuine rapport, real influence, the kind built on understanding, empathy, trust, isn't just a nice-to-have. It's the only path to truly sustainable long-term success. It fosters not just compliance, but deep commitment.
Okay, so commitment over compliance. How do you build that?
It starts with valuing people, not as cogs, but as complex individuals whose motivation you cultivate, not coerce. Let's look at Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence. What makes a leader? Leadership that gets results.
Right, EQ. Big topic.
Huge. And Goleman emphasizes empathy, but not that kind of passive, I'm okay, you're okay, fluffiness. It's a strategic leadership skill, sensing what others feel, understanding their perspectives, and using that knowledge to improve their companies in subtle but important ways. An empathic leader anticipates needs, understands unspoken concerns, tailors communication, it leads to better decisions.
So empathy is intelligence gathering almost.
In a way, and it's coupled with social skill. Again, not just being friendly. Goleman calls it friendliness with a purpose, moving people in the direction you desire.
There's the purpose.
Exactly. It's about building networks, finding common ground, mastering persuasion through understanding and shared vision, not force, building cohesive, high-performing teams. And his research is clear. Leaders who use multiple styles, authoritative when needed, but also democratic, affiliative coaching, they get the very best climate and business performance.
Adaptability.
Crucial adaptability. And he stresses this isn't just innate. Emotional intelligence requires repetition and practice. You have to unlearn old habits, build new brain circuits. It's a skill you develop.
Okay, so empathy and social skill are learnable tools for influence. Where else do we see this?
Stephen Covey. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His win-win paradigm is fundamental.
Win-win. Sounds good, but is it always possible? Machiavelli would probably scoff.
He might. But Covey argues that for deep issues and fundamental differences, a win-win approach where everyone feels they gain something is the only way to lasting solutions. It's not zero-sum.
And how do you get there?
Through empathic listening. This, for Covey, is the key to making deposits in emotional bank accounts.
Emotional bank accounts. Explain that.
Think of it like a real bank account, but for trust. Every time you truly listen, understand, keep a promise, show respect, affirm someone, you make a deposit.
And withdrawals.
Demanding, criticizing unfairly, breaking trust, dismissing concerns, those are withdrawals. Make too many withdrawals without enough deposits and you bankrupt the relationship. Trust is gone. Future influence. Impossible.
Makes sense.
Covey tells this great story about a real estate deal about to collapse. The agent just stopped, listened empathically, really tried to understand the other side's block without jumping to solutions. And by understanding the underlying emotional issue, they saved the deal. It highlights Covey's point. No one can persuade another to change. Each of us guards a gate of change that can only be opened from the inside.
So influence works from the inside out. You can't force it.
Exactly. Coercion gets compliance, maybe. Influence gets commitment. And Covey adds that crucial self-reflection piece. If you start to think the problem is out there, stop yourself. That thought is the problem. Focus on what you can influence.
Taking responsibility for your side of the interaction.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now, building on this relationship dynamic, there's the idea of learning relationships from the article. Do you want to keep your customers forever?
Learning relationships?
Yeah, seeing customer interactions not just as transactions, but as evolving partnerships. It's described as a singularly powerful competitive advantage that can help companies retain their business virtually forever.
How does that work in practice?
Think of Individual Inc. They didn't just give clients news. They provided stories selected to fit the specific, ever-changing interests of each client. They learned what each client needed and saved them from sifting through mountains of irrelevant stuff.
Deep personalization.
Exactly. Or Ross Controls, making pneumatic valves. They have a process to deeply learn about its customers' needs, collaborate with them on tailored designs, and make customized products efficiently.
So they become indispensable partners, not just suppliers.
Precisely. It builds incredible loyalty through mutual learning and genuine service. That's influence built on trust and value, much harder for a competitor to just copy.
Okay, that makes sense for external relationships. What about internal leadership?
Kim and Malborn, Blue Ocean Leadership. They stress empowering people and creating safe environments. Key actions for leaders. Create a safe environment for learning. People need to feel secure enough to try things, even fail sometimes, without fear of harsh reprisal.
Psychological safety?
Absolutely. Also, explain the strategy clearly. Give people purpose. Empower frontline managers to stretch themselves, give autonomy. And critically, coach people, develop them, don't just direct them.
And they also talk about perception versus reality.
Yes. Resolving differences over what leaders are actually doing, the perception on the ground before talking about changes. You need alignment on the present to make a forceful case for change that actually lands and gets buy-in. Otherwise, top-down directives just breed cynicism.
So it's about bringing people along, not just telling them where to go.
Exactly. Peter Drucker, in The Effective Executive, adds another layer. He talks about the focus on contribution, shifting from just doing your tasks to looking up from his work and outward toward goals, aligning effort towards collective impact.
Contribution, not just activity.
Right. And he has this fascinating idea. Effective executives organize disagreement.
Organize disagreement, not suppress it.
No, actively organize it. To protect against false or incomplete information, find alternatives, force the imagination. The goal isn't consensus at all costs, it's understanding why people disagree. Probing assumptions leads to better, more robust decisions.
That's influence through intellectual engagement, respecting different views.
Exactly. Which leads perfectly into modern ideas like radical candor from Kim Scott and insights from Ben Horowitz in The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Radical candor challenged directly. Care personally.
Right. Feedback is a dialogue, not a monologue. Leaders might be wrong. They should encourage people to challenge them. The goal: high standards thoroughly discussed. Tremendous pressure for quality thinking, but openness to being wrong.
How do you prove you're open?
Scott suggests you start asking your team to criticize you. Show you can take it. Build that safety. And Horowitz adds that critical human element, especially in tough times like layoffs. Treating departing employees fairly isn't just decent.
It affects those who stay.
Hugely. Horowitz says, if we hadn't treated the people who were leaving fairly, the people who stayed would never have trusted me again. Trust, cultivated even in hardship, is vital for long-term health.
That's a powerful point about the ripple effects of how you wield power, even necessary power.
It really is. Now think about John D. Rockefeller Sr. from Titan. His employees didn't just obey him, they tended to revere him, vied to please him. One associate said he was like someone who comes along only once in 500 or 600 years.
High praise. How did he achieve that? Not fear, presumably?
Apparently not. He worked through subtle hints, used praise sparingly, but the key was trust. Once he trusted them, he bestowed enormous power upon them.
Delegation. Real delegation.
Massive delegation. His advice: nobody does anything if you can get anybody else to do it. As soon as you can, get someone whom you can rely on, train him. Sit down, cock up your heels, and think out some way for the Standard Oil to make some money.
Empowering others to act and think.
Exactly. Now, he also had this idea of taking workers to a deep place, throw them in and make them sink or swim to develop them.
Okay, wait. That sounds a bit like the hard-nosed approach again. How is that different from Dalio's sort the people? That sounds like pressure.
That's an excellent point, and it really highlights the nuance. The crucial difference, I think, is the foundation. For Rockefeller, it seems this sink-or-swim approach was applied after he'd established trust, when he was sure they have character and think they have ability.
So it was a developmental challenge for people he already believed in.
Exactly. It seems less about weeding out the weak and more about fostering immense growth and ownership in trusted individuals. It was a challenge within a framework of loyalty and delegated power designed to build capability. Dalio's sorting often feels more about systemic efficiency. Does the person fit the predefined process? Rockefeller's approach, even if harsh, seems more focused on developing the individual he'd already chosen to empower. It's about enabling buy-in versus replacing nonconformity.
Okay, that distinction makes sense.
Yeah.
Trust as the prerequisite for the challenge.
Right. And finally, let's not underestimate the sheer power of passion and shared vision. That's pure influence. Think Elon Musk, able to inspire devotion with a physical demonstration of the beauty of the product. People sensed his passion, shared his enthusiasm, even with delays. That's connection, not coercion.
Belief in the mission.
Absolutely. Or Sam Walton, Made in America. His constant fiddling with the status quo, working alongside partners and associates in store openings, we all dove in and got it done. That shared ownership, that collaborative spirit, classic influence leadership.
Everyone feels invested.
Yes. And Starbucks, from pour your heart into it. Building their brand not just on coffee, but on meaningful connection with people, commitment to community, making decisions reflecting their values.
The culture becomes the influence.
Precisely. As Built to Last describes, visionary companies have these bone-deep core values that need no rational or external justification. They provide guidance and inspiration across generations. That's not about power. It's about profound connection, shared belief, collective identity.
Okay, that's a really compelling case for influence, rapport, shared vision, inspiring stuff.
Okay.
But here's where it gets, well, really interesting for me.
Go on.
You've painted this picture of engaged teams, loyal customers. Fantastic. But building that, it takes time, lots of time. It takes a certain kind of nuanced leadership, maybe a specific culture.
It does require investment, yeah.
So is it always feasible? What about rapidly changing markets, highly competitive environments? What about genuine crisis, when speed and decisive action seem like the only options for survival?
When the house is on fire.
Exactly. Do you have time for empathic listening and coaching then? Or do you need someone to grab the hose and give clear, direct, maybe even harsh orders? Sometimes, isn't that hard, decisive hand the only way to make it through the short term? How do you reconcile that need for immediate action with the slow burn of building influence?
You've absolutely nailed the core tension, and maybe connecting this to the bigger picture. Maybe the question isn't which one is better. Maybe it's when and how do we apply each.
Situational leadership.
Exactly. The most effective leaders probably aren't rigid ideologues. They adapt, they flex, they understand the context, the urgency, the people. It's a dynamic interplay, not a fixed choice.
Okay, so how does that play out based on our sources?
Well, think back to Goleman's Leadership That Gets Results. He explicitly says the most effective leaders switch flexibly among the leadership styles. Authoritative in a crisis, sure, but democratic, affiliative, coaching for long-term buy-in and development. The situation dictates the style.
So even a hard style has its place, but it's one tool among many.
Precisely. And Drucker's idea of organizing disagreement, that's not weak or soft. It's a structured, almost rigorous way to use the influence of diverse perspectives to make stronger, more informed decisions. It's adaptable, not just hard or soft.
Okay, that makes sense. Adaptability is key.
And look how power can be used strategically for innovation. Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma. Companies facing disruptive tech often succeeded by using their power to create independent organizations, sized right for the new opportunity.
Spinning off innovation teams.
Right. It wasn't about forcing the old guard to change overnight. It was using organizational power to shield the new thing, letting new forms of influence and innovation flourish in a dedicated space. It's an intelligent use of power to enable adaptation.
Using power to create space for influence, almost.
Kind of. And Kim and Mauborne's Blue Ocean strategy, creating new markets like Home Depot or Southwest did, that requires strategic mastery, understanding markets deeply, and the power to execute a completely new vision. It's beyond simple coercion, it's visionary power.
Okay, so power enables change and innovation sometimes. But what about the stability argument for influence?
Crucial. Think about the discipline of teams. For complex tasks needing more than individual effort, Katzenbach and Smith say that team discipline, shared purpose, goals, mutual accountability is essential. That's built through influence, collaboration, shared learning. You can't force a high-performing team into existence through sheer power alone.
It needs that internal commitment.
Absolutely. And even Dalio, with his sorting principle, also champions radical open-mindedness, overcoming ego, exploring different views within the team he's built. So even he sees the need for influence and open discussion among the right people to get the best ideas. It's a paradox, maybe, but it shows both forces at play.
So hard on who gets in, but relies on influence once they're there.
It seems that way. And the long-term versus short-term tension is so clear in the examples. Intel's structural power, Enron's target fixation, often about leveraging hard power for immediate results or advantages.
Quick wins, market dominance.
Right. Whereas Rockefeller, Walton, Starbucks, their focus on people, values, community. That's about building enduring brands, loyalty, sustained growth over decades. That's the long game of influence.
Hard power for the sprint, soft power for the marathon.
That's one way to look at it. Even think about productivity advice, like from deep work. Ignoring emails that aren't easy, great for individual focus short term, but potentially damaging to team relationships long term if you're never responsive. That tension exists even at the micro level.
The constant balancing act, then. So what does this all mean for you, our listener? You're out there leading projects, managing teams, building businesses, even just navigating family dynamics.
Yeah. How do you apply this?
It really does seem like it's not either. It's knowing when to be feared, or at least when to be incredibly firm and clear, and when to be loved, or at least deeply understood and trusted. But cultivating that judgment, that's the tricky part, isn't it?
It is, that discernment.
How do you develop that sense of when to flex, when to hold firm? It seems like it requires, I don't know, deep self-awareness, understanding the context, the people involved, and being crystal clear on your goals, both immediate and long-term.
It's not a formula you can just apply.
No, it feels more like artful leadership.
Yeah.
A constant dynamic calibration.
I think that's right. We've seen Machiavelli's focus on strategic fear, pragmatic power like Intel's dominance, Enron's drive, Goldman's maneuvering. It can deliver rapid results, seize control, it prioritizes efficiency, clear outcomes.
The get-it-done approach.
Exactly. But we've also seen the power of that Carnegie-style influence, empathy, rapport, shared vision, like with Rockefeller, Walton, Goldman's EQ, Covey's trust accounts, radical candor. That cultivates loyalty, innovation, long-term sustainability. It builds that internal engine of commitment.
Not just an external structure of control.
Right.
So ultimately, it seems both power and influence are vital tools. Neither is inherently better across the board. They're effective, sustainable use. That demands that nuanced understanding you talked about: context, goals, human nature.
Knowing when a firm hand is needed, crisis, maintaining order, seizing a window of opportunity.
And when patience, empathy, collaboration are essential, building trust, inspiring commitment, fostering growth that lasts, the real masters maybe don't choose one. They weave them together, an intricate dance.
A potent, adaptable approach. So this really brings us to a final thought, a question for you, our listener, to take away and mull over.
Yeah.
In your own life, leading your team, running your business, navigating your relationships, think about it. When do you consciously choose to exert power? And when do you consciously, strategically seek to build influence?
And maybe even more importantly,
How do you know which path in that specific moment is truly leading you towards your most profound, most sustainable success? What are the signs you look for?
that's the ongoing challenge. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into power versus influence, a debate that's as relevant today as it was centuries ago.
We hope it gave you some food for thought.
Definitely. We encourage you to reflect on your own style, your own tendencies, and consider how you might adapt moment by moment to lead with both immediate effectiveness and lasting, meaningful impact.